This is literally John and Dave sitting there for 20 minutes answering questions. So we're going to go through it. Are you ready?
Here we go. There we go.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Hello.
The Mandalorian and the Jedi have a long history in the galaxy far, far away, and both are rebuilding in the show's era. Is Grogu a nexus point for those two cultures to perhaps unite under Tar Vizsla's Darksaber?
That's a very interesting perspective. You know, he is definitely somebody who has spent time in both worlds. And we know that he started off earlier in the Jedi Temple. We've seen flashbacks to that, that speak to that. And then we know that he's been rescued and spent many years with the Mandalorian, went back with Luke. Now we've been 2 years apart from him there training. What's interesting is that as he chooses to return to his friend, the Mandalorian, because he's developed an attachment, it's interesting how that echoes in a way Luke's path when he was, was drawn to the attachment to his friends and how that helped shape the future. So I think that you're pointing out an interesting thing that we definitely...
Straight off the bat, we go to that 2-year thing and the many years with Mando and the attachment thing. This is the thing, though. Yes, he does have the attachment. Grogu does have the attachment with Mando, but the attachment, whole concept of attachment is that Luke should still be training Grogu even with that, essentially that attachment. He shouldn't have basically just let him go. Because again, now after 2 years of apparent training, Grogu is using the Force selfishly, for selfish purposes, for his own entertainment, his own comedic value. It's more so for the audience so that they can sit there and go, look how cute he is, spinning himself around in the chair and all of that sort of thing. But that's very dark side. That's not very Jedi of him to be doing that. And for the amount of training that you so-called say that he has had in regards to the training that he's had in the temple, and now again the training that he's had with Luke, none of that actually makes any sense to see why Grogu is doing what he's doing now.
Discuss a great deal of where does he sit and who has come before him and what is the relationship of those two civilizations, because the Mandalorian armor, as Dave has taught me, is developed to counteract all of the natural abilities that the Jedi had and made it a more level playing field. So we have
as Dave has taught you, Dave taught you that Beskar is, it gives the Mandalorians a bit more of a level playing field with the Jedi, so they're more easily able to, combat them. Interesting how Dave Filoni was the one that taught you that.
A lot to draw from, both from the Clone Wars, where they both cooperated and fought. And we also have ancient history as we saw in games and in extended...
It's interesting how in the Vizsla versus Maul fight, Vizsla wasn't able to use his armor to stop the Darksaber in that, was he? It's interesting, isn't it? Dave Filoni just loves to change the lore and the continuity and the canon at his disposal so that he can actually make it what he wants it to be, not what it should be, or not what it has been established to be. It's a bit like how the Darksaber is now this weapon that needs to be fought for, and you need to win it in battle, as opposed to the fact that in the Clone Wars, Sabine gave it to Bo-Katan freely. And she was able to accept it, and the Mandalorian still followed her. Interesting, isn't it?
Universe, where we know what you're referring to, which is that they didn't get along very well in the past. So that's a very interesting, valid perspective.
Deep question.
Hi Dave. Hi, John. Such an honor to speak with you today. One thing we see a lot of in Star Wars is the connections between generations, often in the form of master and apprentice or father and son with Din and Grogu. Why do you think this dynamic is so compelling?
Oh, the father and son with Din and Grogu. Interesting. Not father-son with Luke and Vader or anything like that. It's Din and Grogu. What was the remainder of her question?
Why do you think this dynamic is so compelling?
I think that, we're all, as we grow up, we're always seeking knowledge. We're always seeking to be understood and to understand the world around us better. I think that, in so many disciplines beyond even a martial art, there is a master and apprentice, in a very real way. I felt fortunate that George was my mentor for many years to even learn how to make Star Wars. So
Yeah, and it's too bad you've completely rammed him in the asshole, you fucking asshole. He mentored me. He trained me. I'm the apprentice to George. Fuck you. Fuck you. You evil fucking piece of shit that just feels like you're now the master. Oh, ugh.
those relationships in your journey through life, you find people that know more than you and that help educate you, that help you on your way.
It seems that I know more than you, Mr. fucking Dave Filoni. Dave Baloney. So if I was to come out and criticize you, what are you going to say about me?
And so I think it's just something that we all understand consciously, unconsciously. I think when you add a family dynamic to it, like Mando and Grogu, it's even more powerful because we have that relationship in our life from the beginning. And in Star Wars Rebels, we explored how that relationship can be different. It can be an adoptive family. It's not even necessarily the family that you're born into. And I think
In Star Wars, that seems to be more powerful.
To be something that happens quite a bit.
And that your bloodline isn't necessarily the most
defining thing.
right.
Yeah, Mando and Grogu are adopted too. Mando was an outcast and Grogu was adrift. So I think people feel these ways, and that's why they want to see characters overcome them. We want to see, we are dying for Mando to shut the ship off and go get Grogu in season 1. That's the right thing to do, and we want to believe that we're going to do the right thing. We want to be Luke and be brave enough to not rely on the targeted computer and turn it off. We want to believe in ourselves. But it takes everything that these stories tell us leading up to that moment to get these characters over that hump and do these things. But I think that's why we respond to it. We see the characters do things that maybe we're not quite capable of yet, but they give us confidence to take the next step, hopefully, in life.
Hi, gentlemen. This is Sarah and Richard from Skywalking to Neverland. It's great to see you guys again.
Yeah, bright suns.
Yeah.
See, notice that they bring in all the Disney SEALs or the Disney shills to ask questions. They would never reach out to me and say, do you want to ask John and Dave a question? Oh, man, I'd be there. Oh, hang on. Let me see if I can think of a question, like an actual legitimate question that I would ask them. Oh, straight off the bat, I'd be like, how do tracking fobs work? You invented these devices called tracking fobs that can track people across the galaxy. Can you please explain to me how they work? Another question would be, why have you turned hyperspace into teleportation? Why can't you actually show us the timeline in a good, cohesive, consistent way? Why do you have to tell us? Why do you have to explain it? And this is why they'd never get me to ask these fucktards a question.
We know you can't give too many deep cuts on this upcoming season, but can you give us some deep cut Easter eggs to look out for?
That's a stupid question.
Well, that's part of the fun of the Easter egg, is that it's something that you find, right? Isn't that it?
That's a stupid question. That's a waste of a question from a fucking Disney Star Wars seal. Oh, what Easter eggs are they going to be? You think they're going to tell you what Easter eggs they've put in? Exactly what John just said. He's right. The fun of an Easter egg is the fact that it's an Easter egg. You find it, you see it in there. That's a stupid question. Waste. What a fucking waste.
We really try to do everything we can to find aspects of Star Wars that maybe is unexpected for us to include. And I think that we had a lot of fun at first with drawing from the Star Wars holiday special with the Amban, the pulse rifle, and also the Camtono being the Wilrose Hood's ice
That's
cream
another
maker.
thing too, is what's happened to his pulse rifle? Where is that? We didn't see it at all through this most recent episode of Mando. He's not carrying it around on his back or anything. At least not that I noticed.
I think that the part of that I'm enjoying the most about this process is that no matter what part of fandom you're from and no matter what you grew up with and what era you connect with, we want to make sure that everybody we have something for everybody here, and that everybody's welcome to be part of it, even if you're a new fan. Even if you're starting off, hopefully, I think that was one of the nice things about the first season, is that these were characters. Now, if you knew about Star Wars.
Oh, that's actually a good point. Maybe it was. Maybe it was destroyed in the Razor Crest.
Hopefully there was a lot of rewards for all the time spent reading the books or watching.
No, John, there's no reward for all the time spent reading the books. You know why? Because all those books that you're referring to and referencing have been decanonized in the eyes of the company that you work for, you idiots. So there's nothing in there for the people that read all the books, other than the fact that you're plucking it from the books and putting it into and changing essentially what it was. That's what it's there for you.
The movies or even the TV shows. But if you were new, you were just as welcome, arguably more welcome.
Arguably more welcome, because the old voices don't mean anything anymore. The old fan voices don't mean anything anymore. So arguably you are more welcome because you're more willing to turn your brain off and accept it for the garbage that it actually is. So we'll listen to you more, these people asking the questions, the seals, the shills, and it's more for you, the new fans, than it is for the old fans, even though we're trying to make it for all the fans. If you had have just continued the story and told Star Wars the way that it was supposed to be told, in the way that George wanted it told, well, then you'd still have all of those old fans and you'd have their kids and their kids moving forward as your ongoing new fans. But no, we've got to cater to the LGBTQ and we've got to cater to the retards and we've got to cater to the fucking, the pronoun police on Twitter. And arguably, it's more for you than it is for them.
Generation in. And it's always been an open door for young people. And as a kid, still remember, I felt 10, 11 years old. It felt like it was for me, but it didn't feel like it was pandering. And so we try to...
Yeah, so now we've decided to make it feel like it's for all the new kids and we're going to pander to you.
We want to try to make everybody feel that there's something for them here. And we talk about that quite a bit. And we have directors from different segments of the entertainment world, bringing different perspectives. That's animation, independent film, So all of it is meant to really make it feel like how it feels when you're at a celebration. You have people from all around the world dressed as different characters, different ages, and everybody's happy and taking pictures together. That's what it feels like for us, and that's what we want to try to capture with the show.
Well, thank you very much, and ignite the spark.
What a fucking tool. Ignite the spark. I'm surprised you didn't say this is so gay. Sorry, this is the way.
Well, other.
Hello.
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 It's insane to be before the mighty Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau.
Oh, wow. Suck some more dick.
Thank you.
You're
Wow.
too kind.
Oh, I gotta put my heart back in my chest. All right. So The Mandalorian has been praised for its ability to tell a story that resonates with audiences on a very deep level. So if art is a form of a mirror, what do you think Din Djarin's character reflects back to us about ourselves and our society?
Oh, this is we've been able to see ourselves through Din Djarin. We couldn't see ourselves through Luke Skywalker. We couldn't see ourselves through Han Solo or Princess Leia or anything like that because it was way back then and it was George Lucas. But if we were looking at the mirror and we were seeing Din Djarin, what would we see back at ourselves? What a stupid, again, another stupid, retarded, silly, fucking shill question.
For me, I can only speak personally. What appealed to me about Mando from the beginning was that he's somebody that's very protected. He's inside armor. And while that armor gives...
Yes, very protected. In fact, he's so protected that every time he gets shot at, the blasters hit his armor as opposed to hitting the 70% of his body that's exposed. Very protected.
him a benefit. It also has him, I thought, incredibly closed off. And I think that we feel that way. We put on our armor a lot these days, and everything feels very combative, and the world outside maybe doesn't feel as friendly to us, and so we're armored up. But the significant thing for Mando is that when he meets Grogu, that all changes. It's small things at first, and it becomes simple kindnesses. I'm protecting him. Why? Because he's worth money. but then
Smoke
he
if
ends
you
up
got 'em.
protecting him because it is the right thing to do. And so I think that, Mando as a character is reflecting this armor, but we have to ask ourselves, what does that armor really mean? What is its value? It is his face, but when he finally takes the helmet off and Grogu sees his face and he touches his face at the end of season 2, it becomes something more. It becomes, I'm showing you my true face, my true self. I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable. So I think that those are the things that really appeal to me about Mando, and it's allowing us maybe to take our own helmet off and be more visible to people. I mean, that's the way I read it. I don't know if you feel that way, but there you go.
Look at that fucking smirk. There you go. I don't know. That's how I view it. That's how I see it, but I don't know.
Does that help?
I like it.
Hello, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to speak to you again. The question I've got, and I'm sure Dave, you've fielded a lot of these, is just a lot of the cinematic influences. In Book of Boba Fett, there's definitely a lot of Lone Wolf and Cub in the choice Luke gives Grogu. But John, you mentioned in an interview Paper Moon.
Yes.
And I went back and rewatched it again, and that movie's so good, and it hit me right between the eyes. And I'm wondering if you could, if you both could kind of speak to the conversations about your influences in this coming season, and stuff that might be surprising, like Paper Moon.
I think so.
Well, they were influenced in the last episode of the Bad Batch by Alien. They've been influenced throughout this entire fucking thing with the Mandalorian. Maybe 3 men and a little baby or something. Something along those lines, possibly.
Some of it just is, the writing process and filmmaking process, but especially the writing process is not really a conscious one for me. We do a lot of discussion about, and very much a conscious set of decisions about the broad strokes of where we're going to go and what we're going to do. But when you're actually letting the characters talk to each other and the story is unfolding, if you're doing a good job writing, it doesn't always feel, you don't always know what's going to happen next. And you're really a product, your subconscious is really a product of all your influences. And Paper Moon.
You don't know what's going to happen next. Shouldn't you have this planned out, though? Shouldn't you know what's going to happen next as the creator, the writer, the director? Like, honestly, shouldn't they know?
Moon was a very strong influence on me. And a lot of movies of that time period. I'm now in my, I'm 56, I think. Yeah, I think I'm 56. At my age, you start to lose track of the years, but late 50s.
Number.
And I grew up with the Bad News Bears, and I grew up with, Paper Moon, and films like that had, there were such interesting relationships of misfits who feel like they're don't belong anywhere, but these family relationships emerge, and then the family relationships are often stronger than the bloodline relationships, and that's certainly a hallmark of Star Wars. Families.
The bloodline relationships was the hallmark of Star Wars. What did George say when he said that if he was ever going to do an episode 7, 8, and 9, it would be about the grandchildren, the children and the grandchildren? Like, it was supposed to be about the bloodlines. They're trying to make it something that it's not, something that it's never supposed to have been. It's about the adopted children and the grooming of those children, by the sounds of what fucking Filoni says.
Develop around these characters that are spending time together, and bonds are forming, and people are changing who they are based on the experiences that they have together. Look at the arc of Han Solo in the first film. Somebody who seems to be very selfish. And I think that progression from selfishness to living for something and sacrificing for people or something bigger than yourself is very much a part of Star Wars, but the hero's journey and everything that George learned from Joseph Campbell as well. We're a communal species. We're a cooperative species. And we are rewarded in the throe of history for when we act in that way, when we think about things that are more important than just our own individual needs. And so Paper Moon is such a wonderful film because you think it's all about transporting this character, to their living relative after their mother passes away. And then we figure out it's a bit ambiguous, but it's suggested that maybe she was actually his daughter. What's interesting because the actors are actually father and daughter. But the idea that when she finally gets delivered to where she belongs, you realize, no, that journey was what reinforced it. And that bond was what was important for both of them. And so the unexpected twist of her leaving behind this cushy life that she could have had and going and being a con artist with Ryan O'Neal, I find it unexpected and fulfilling and really satisfying ending. And it's just a beautiful movie. And so, as you point out, we do find influences in cinema stylistically, but also story-wise, because great stories have been told before, and Star Wars is a wonderful way to encapsulate a lot of what came before and serve it up to a new generation.
You've destroyed what came before. You've destroyed what came before. You continue to destroy it with things like your hyperspace, with things like your tracking fobs, with things like your Mandalorian cult and removing of helmets and leaving helmets on and throwing the nostalgia bait at the screen so the seals will clap. You've destroyed what came before. You haven't advanced it. That's where the expanded universe, being the expanded universe, was so good, because it expanded. It didn't explain. It's not called the explained universe. Whereas you seem to have to explain everything that you're doing instead of actually showing what you're doing. Honoring the fucking past. You guys don't even know what the word honor means. You guys have got no honor. You fucked George Lucas in the ass. And he is fucking probably sitting in the fetal position, fucking bawling his eyes out because he fucking regrets everything that has happened in the last 10 years.
In a slightly different context.
Hello, gentlemen. This is a question I ask my mythology students, and I'm excited to see what the two of you think about this. I want to see if you can talk about the symbolism of Din Djarin initially struggling with wielding the dark saber in the Book of Boba Fett.
That's a great question. I'm glad you caught that.
Oh, that's a question that I'd ask. How does the dark saber have a mind of its own and can actually become heavier? We've never seen sabers get heavy or change their weight just because they can sense and feel how the wielder is feeling or using them against the will of the saber. So what made you come up with the stupid, pathetic idea to bring that in as a concept?
Because on the one hand, you're super excited because as the first person who ever wielded the dark saber.
Oh boy, here we go.
Did the stream freeze? Did it? Are we good now? I hope we're good now.
Vizsla. I could say that it was that George, that was a reshoot, by the way, because I was originally, that's a public record, right? It was originally when I recorded the voice, it was a vibroblade. Mm-hmm. And when George had seen it cut together, I found out from Dave, because I got called back into the recording booth, that no, the vibroblade can't block another lightsaber. It has to be, and he created this lore around the dark saber that was stolen from a Jedi temple, and the idea of Tar Vizsla, somebody who was a Jedi and a Mandalorian, and I remember, I got to go back and record this. I told my wife what I was doing. I got to go back and I got to do it again. She was like, George is right. That's super cool. Super cool. And she was right. It ended up being this compelling image of what this thing is. But then also I got my clues from Rebels where, when Sabine was learning to wield it, it was heavy to her. Mm-hmm. And the sense that...
Was it really? We had the weight and change of the weight and everything come in Rebels. Another Disney creation, another Filoni creation. I don't remember that.
There is, it's almost like the teachings in martial arts of you can't grab water. You have to cup your hands, and it's not something you could control. You have to flow with it. And the Mandalorian, somebody who probably doesn't have a lot of force abilities and doesn't have any training in it, and who's great at every other weapon, this thing is heavy. And you notice when Paz Vizsla picks up the darksaber to use it, it ends up being the thing that probably loses the battle for him in the Book of Boba Fett. That he's even stronger, but it's even heavier to him. And so that whole Excalibur, sword in the stone, if it's your if you're fated to do this. So there's something larger that's allowing you to wield these things, and they become mythic or symbolic metaphors for whether this is your destiny, and if you're trying to force something. So, you know, the strongest knights in the land.
So based on that, Din Djarin isn't destined to hold the Darksaber, because the Darksaber, yeah, I'm a bit the same, man. What the fuck?
And could not budge the sword and pull it from the stone. And you want to fill in the rest of that?
No, it's all very good. Yeah, I mean, you did wield the sword, so you do now. But yeah, I think it's a matter of, you know, when you're wielding a weapon like that, it is a lot of what's in your mind and in your heart more than your physical prowess. And I think that is what Kanan was trying to teach Sabine. She's fantastic she's a great warrior, but she's not balanced in her mind. All of her struggles with her family are preventing her from growing, are preventing her from being balanced in her body. And so, you know, with the Mando, he comes into this thing the right way because he doesn't really even want it. But that lack of wanting it.
Yeah, Moff Gideon must have been very worthy of holding the Darksaber, especially in that fight that we saw from in the Seal of the Week. We've got to actually go back and finish that poll, which we'll get to.
Is almost like a lack of responsibility. It's saying that, well, why don't you value it? And how can you wield it if you don't really even value it? So it's
and
always
also
a good metaphor.
What's also cool is when he hurts him, he's using it. He's like limping around like this thing. Imagine, because I always thought about that, like a lightsaber. If you don't know how to use it,
it's a fumble.
That's got to be a bigger. That's not. Yeah, it's not a good. It always amazed me that they weren't hurting themselves more. With
I think a lot of people did. You just didn't hear about them because you hurt yourself. You're not in the story anymore.
Right.
You fall out of it.
But they're all having.
I was always shocked when Han used Luke's lightsaber to cut open the tauntaun.
I was always shocked by that. He literally turns it on, fucking slices the tauntaun open and turns it off. It's not like he was using it. That's just stupid, Dave. That's just fucking stupid, man. He literally did it to save Luke Skywalker's life, to bring his body temperature back up. That's dumb. That is one of the dumbest things I think I've ever heard come out of Dave Filoni's dumbass mouth.
Thought that was a big move. But he's smart, you know, but all he does is make a little
that's
slit.
it. One quick thing,
Not a big deal.
No, he's not fighting.
He doesn't want to use that.
It.
It's like, here's the other thing about a lightsaber. By any definition of the world they live in, it's a really old weapon.
Right.
So I've talked about this.
It's not as cool to them, you were saying.
No,
as it
it's
is
not.
To us.
Like a samurai is an incredibly well-trained warrior, and that seems great, and they're highly effective, and they're very smart, and they have a way of being. And then rifles come around. And when you see the Seven Samurai, you see how difficult it is for these incredibly skilled warriors with with a philosophy and a way of life, but they just get thoughtlessly taken out by someone with a rifle. And so, you know, it's up to Cuso to go in and take out as many as he can. And it's dangerous because technology is overcoming what skill and discipline is given them. And that becomes a quick and easy path to power, right? Is now we have a weapon, a blaster that can just, you know, take down a Jedi. So now we have more people with more blasters. And that's like, it is an old, elegant thing to wield a lightsaber. And it takes a tremendous amount of training and discipline to wield it. You just can't pick it up and use it. So all of that then fits in with George's philosophy about the Force itself, which is, yes, we are all part of the Force. We are all connected. We all have it. But it takes a great deal of training and discipline to understand how to wield it. And very few people have that discipline. In our own world, we see that. It's so hard to be disciplined to do things that are good for us, physically, mind, body, spirit. So it's true in the Star Wars universe as well.
Great talking to you. Hopefully we'll see a celebration. Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah, celebration.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
That's it. So there was a lot of like deflection through their answers. Obviously, there was a couple of dumb questions in there, like that guy that asked about the Easter eggs, like they're actually going to tell you. some of their explanations of what the lightsabers can do, some of the explanations of seeing yourself, the explanations of bloodlines, and Star Wars isn't really about bloodlines. It's about fathers and adopted sons and shit like that, and being able to see yourself through that and making those good decisions and good things. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, anyone in season 1 of Mandalorian, when Din Djarin takes the baby back and he's sort of having those second thoughts, yeah, okay, we can all kind of agree that Din Djarin essentially in that moment, in their canon, in their lore, made the right decision in regards to saving the kid. But it's just, again, the fans and the questions that they asked throughout this, the responses that they gave back, very shallow, very and the fact that they've got to try and bring George Lucas into their answers and try and use that to explain why certain things are the way they are, like especially with that thing with the heaviness of the Darksaber and everything. So what, like all the Jedi that ever use their sabers, turn to the dark side and use their sabers, that the saber was always okay with that and the decisions that they were making. Like, I don't buy it. And again, this actually just solidifies for me how much these two and how much Filoni has Favreau in his pocket. Referencing Rebels, referencing all Disney Star Wars stuff, not really George Lucas's stuff. So that's it. That's pretty much it.